Hello, this is Kathy Lou Waskett, and this is the Waskett Tales. These are stories that I've written and looking forward to sharing with you. Please let me know what you think, and you can buy these stories on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also buy it on this site as well. This is called The Dreamer. This is the first story I'm going to be reading, and this is from The Dreamer and His Amazing Tales. The Dreamer. Joseph was a dreamer. He would sit at his desk and watch the sky outside. He would imagine being an astronaut, a commander of a starship, or flying to the moon. Joseph could imagine himself anywhere, but at his desk, waiting for a test. The teacher explained to the class what the math test was going to be on. The test would be the following Friday. Joseph looked at the teacher and felt anxious, had a fear of failing. How am I going to do this? How am I going to learn this by Friday? Joseph started daydreaming and drifted off into his thoughts. He squirmed in his seat. Joseph raised his hand and asked, "Can I use the calculator?" "No," said Miss Rogers. "I want you to figure out the answers without a calculator." "What do I do now?" Joseph thought. Just then the bell rang. "Saved by the bell." The teacher told the class to study hard for the math test. As the class was being dismissed, Miss Rogers asked Joseph to stay a couple minutes after class. Joseph stayed and walked up to the teacher. He was very nervous. He didn't know what the teacher was going to say to him. But he was definitely scared about this math test because he wasn't good in math at all, or didn't think he was. Well, Miss Rogers had a concerned look on her face. "Joseph, what's wrong? Something seems to be bothering you today." "I can't do these math problems. My mom doesn't understand them either." Miss Rogers smiled. She understood Joseph's frustrations and sincerely wanted to help. She's a very good teacher. "I could tell you were getting frustrated. I know someone who could help you with the tutoring center." "Who?" said Joseph. "A man named Abraham. He is very good in math. I will ask your parents if you can get some tutoring." Joseph's parents weren't together, and Joe lived with his mom. Miss Rogers called Joseph's mother, and she gave permission for Joseph to be tutored. Joseph could catch the late bus home. The next day after school, Joseph met Abraham. Abraham was a teacher's aide who knew math very well. Well, Abraham listened as Joseph explained his fears and frustrations in math. Abraham asked what problems they were working on. Joseph showed the math problems that included a lot of problem-solving equations. Abraham listened. "Tell you what, Joseph, I'm going to show you how to do the problems using things in your classroom." Abraham got out paper and started explaining word problems, equations, fractions, and algebraic problems in a way that made sense to Joseph. Abraham made learning fun by using drawings, coloring, and putting objects together to solve the equations. Joseph worked with Abraham every day after school and learned how to do the math problems. Math was starting to be one of Joseph's favorite subjects. Well, came the time for the test. That came close to that time, and Joseph started out working on the problems. They were getting a little bit easier, and Joseph started wondering, How is it you understand kids like me so well? Because at one time I was a dreamer just like you. Someone helped me and didn't give up when things got hard. I knew that someday I would get a chance to help someone else. I'm glad that I could help. Joseph said to himself, maybe I can help someone someday. Well, Friday came up. The math tests were handed out. Joseph prayed, God, help me to remember what Abraham taught me. He wrote his name and date on the paper. He looked at the test questions. Joseph was amazed. He answered the questions with no problem. Abraham was standing outside the classroom door. Joseph was happy to see him. Well, you know what? He did really well on that test. He ended up getting all the questions right. And his mom was so proud of him. And he was so happy because he showed himself he could do it. He didn't believe he could, but he actually showed himself he could. Well, Abraham continued to help Joseph at the tutoring center. He became a good role model and friend to Joseph. Abraham was there with Joseph's mom and Joseph when he went to his high school graduation. So he knew him for years and years afterwards. He continued to help him. Tears were in Abraham's eyes as he watched Joseph get his diploma and be acknowledged as one of the top students of his 1981 class. Joseph went to college after graduation and became a computer software engineer. He developed and designed programs for top companies. He came home for a visit with his mom. He started thinking about Abraham and wondering, how was he doing? And hadn't thought about him for a while, but all of a sudden he just started thinking about him, how he'd really helped him. And he asked his mom if he had heard about Abraham or what was going on with Abraham. And mom said Abraham was in a nursing home, apparently, and had a stroke, so he had to retire. Joseph's mom said she'd heard he was at the Angel of Peace nursing home. But Joseph hugged his mom and said he was going to pay Abraham a visit. Joseph programmed his GPS, drove away in his car, and walked into the nursing home. Of course, that was after parking the car and all that. Because, of course, he was a safe driver. Could never leave that out. Well, when he walked into the nursing home, opened the doors, and he went up to the nurse's station and he said, where's Abraham Wallace? Well, they asked, are you a family member? No, just an old friend. The nurse pointed Abraham out. Mr. Wallace was sitting in his wheelchair watching the news. Joseph walked up to Abraham's wheelchair and said, hi, Abraham, remember me? Abraham looked at him through half-closed eyes. A puzzled look came on his face. And all of a sudden, this look of recognition. I remember you. Joseph, is that you? Yes, it's me. So how's my favorite dreamer doing? Fine, I'm doing great. I was thinking of you. Had a bunch of students from the local middle school to visit where I work. It was for a regional occupational program, so kids could get some ideas about different work environments. I saw one young man who kept to himself and seemed lost in thought. He reminded me a lot of myself. I would really like to help others like you helped me so learning could be fun. Abraham listened to Joseph and asked him to lean closer. It was hard for Abraham to speak, but he wanted to give one more word of inspiration. Joseph leaned over to Abraham's wheelchair, and he said ever so softly, he leaned over to Joseph, "Carry the light, Joseph." What? Joseph didn't understand what that meant. Help others. Help others to learn that learning can be fun. Show them that you're not afraid to stand up for what's right. Show them that you care. Joseph listened and understood. To fully know the benefit of education, you need to share what you've been taught. Joseph started working 2 afternoons a week at the middle school tutoring math. He met another young middle schooler in the tutoring center named Brian. Brian was drifting off during class, and he was advised to come to the tutoring center for help with math. Well, Brian was a dreamer, just like Joseph had been. "What problems are you working on in class?" Brian showed Joseph some algebra and geometry problem-solving questions. Joseph knew just how to help him. "Let me show you how much fun this can be." "Let me show you how much fun math can be." Joseph reassured Brian, "But you're going to learn. It's all right. I'm going to help you." Well, the boy's face lit up. That was when Joseph remembered what Abraham said. Carry the light. Joseph decided he would carry the light and light the way. And that is the story of the dreamer. And it's from The Dreamer and His Amazing Tales. Thank you for listening. And if you're interested in more stories, please tune into the Wasket Tales. And this is Kathy Lou Wasket. Thank you, and God bless, and keep you safe.